I've worked night shifts most of my life. There's something about the quiet hours that suits me. Fewer people, fewer distractions. It's just you, the hum of machinery, and the occasional creak of a settling building. I've done it all. Warehouses, factories, even a stint at a cold storage facility. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what happened at the Oakwood Processing Plant. It started with an ad. Night shift technician needed. Immediate start. High pay. The words jumped out at me like a lifeline. I'd been unemployed for weeks, my savings dwindling to nothing. I didn't care that the ad was vague or that the plant was in the middle of nowhere. I needed the money, plain and simple. The interview was strange from the start. The plant manager, Mr. Rodriguez, barely looked at my resume. He was a wiry man with deep-set eyes and a nervous energy that made me feel like he was constantly on edge. His office smelled faintly of oil and something metallic like blood. "We need someone who can follow instructions exactly," he said, sliding a thick manual across the desk toward me. Its pages were edged in red, and it looked far too large for what I assumed was a basic technician job. "Sure," I said, flipping through it. The text was dense and technical at first glance. Diagrams of machines, safety protocols, but as I skimmed further, I noticed something off. In some sections were handwritten in shaky penmanship with notes like, "Do not enter Sector 7 after 2 a.m. under any circumstances. If Machine 13 emits a high-pitched tone, do not approach it. Always wear your protective glasses and earpiece during rounds. Never look directly into the cooling tanks if they're illuminated." I frowned and looked up at him. "What's all this?" Rodriguez's lips tightened into a thin line. "Just follow the manual," he said curtly. "Every instruction matters." I should have walked out right then and there, but desperation makes you ignore red flags. The Oakwood Processing Plant sat on the outskirts of town, surrounded by dense woods that seemed to swallow all sound. The building itself was massive, a sprawling industrial complex with towering smokestacks that loomed against the night sky like silent sentinels. When I arrived for my first shift, Elena, the night supervisor, was waiting for me by the front gate. She was older, probably in her mid-50s, with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through you. "You're the new guy?" she asked without much enthusiasm. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound confident despite the unease creeping up my spine. She handed me a flashlight and gestured toward the plant's main entrance. "Follow me." As we walked through the labyrinthine corridors of steel pipes and conveyor belts, Elena gave me a quick rundown of my duties. Monitor equipment readings every hour, ensure no malfunctions occurred during production downtime, and report anything unusual to her immediately. Her tone shifted when she added one last thing. "And whatever you do, follow the manual." I nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling that there was more she wasn't telling me. By midnight, I had settled into my routine, or at least tried to. The plant was eerily quiet at night, save for the occasional groan of metal or distant hiss of steam escaping from unseen pipes. The dim fluorescent lights overhead flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. My first patrol took me through Sector 3, a maze of conveyor belts lined with dormant machinery, and into Sector 5, where massive cooling tanks loomed like sleeping giants. The air here felt colder than it should have been, and there was an odd smell, something chemical mixed with decay. As I passed one of the tanks, I noticed a faint glow emanating from its base. Remembering one of the manual's rules, never look directly into illuminated cooling tanks, I kept my gaze fixed straight ahead and quickened my pace. But then I heard it, a soft tapping sound coming from inside the tank. I froze. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't random. It had rhythm, like someone knocking from within. My heart raced as I forced myself to keep walking. Whatever it was, whatever they were, I didn't want to find out. Around 1:30 a.m., as I logged equipment readings in Sector 6, a low hum began to fill the air, a a sound so deep it vibrated in my chest. It seemed to be coming from Machine 13, a hulking piece of equipment tucked away in a corner of the plant. I approached cautiously but stopped dead in my tracks when I remembered another rule. If Machine 13 emits a high-pitched tone, do not approach. As if on cue, the hum shifted into an ear-piercing whine that made my earpiece crackle with static. My head throbbed as I stumbled backward, clutching my ears. And then I saw it. Something moved behind Machine 13, something large and impossibly fast. It darted between shadows with unnatural fluidity before disappearing into one of the access tunnels leading to Sector 7. My flashlight flickered as cold sweat dripped down my back. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to run, but fear rooted me in place. By 2 a.m., Elena radioed me to check in. Her voice sounded strained through the static-filled connection. "Stay out of Sector 7. I wasn't planning on going there, I replied shakily. "Good," she said before abruptly cutting off communication. But something about her tone unsettled me. It wasn't just caution, it was fear. Sector 7 had been locked down since before my shift started. According to Rodriguez during orientation, it housed old machinery no longer in use, a part of the plant they hadn't bothered decommissioning yet. But as I passed by its entrance during my next patrol, something caught my eye. Movement behind the heavy steel door separating Sector 7 from the rest of the plant. It wasn't subtle either. It looked like someone, or something, was pacing back and forth just beyond the frosted glass window embedded in the door. I should have walked away, but curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked the door, just enough to peek inside, and immediately regretted it. The air inside Sector 7 was thick and suffocating, carrying an overwhelming stench of rot and ozone. The walls were covered in strange symbols etched into steel, symbols that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly light. It was the thing from behind Machine 13. It stood hunched over one of the old conveyor belts, a grotesque amalgamation of flesh and machinery. Its body was twisted and wrong, metal plates fused with sinew, wires snaking out from its exposed spine. Its face, if you could call it that, was little more than a featureless mask with hollow eye sockets, glowing faintly blue. It turned toward me slowly, as if sensing my presence despite having no eyes to see with, and then it moved faster than anything that size should have been able to move. I slammed the door shut just as its clawed hand swiped at me through the gap and ran like hell back toward Elena's office. When I burst through her door, breathless and pale-faced, Elena didn't look surprised. Instead, she looked resigned, almost sad. "You saw it," she said quietly, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "What is it?" I demanded between gasps for air. She sighed deeply before replying, "This place. It isn't just a processing plant anymore, not since they came." "Who?" I asked desperately, but before she could answer, the lights flickered and went out completely. In total darkness came whispers, dozens of voices speaking in unison from every direction, and then the sound of heavy footsteps approaching from down the hall. Elena shoved something into my hands, a key card, and whispered urgently, "Get to Control Room B. It's your only way out." "What about you?" I asked, but she just shook her head solemnly before stepping into the hallway, slamming her office door behind her. The last thing I heard before running was her voice shouting defiantly against whatever horror had found us. I don't remember much about how I escaped, just flashes, sprinting through dark corridors lit only by emergency strobes, that thing chasing me, its claws scraping against metal. When I finally made it outside, the sun was rising. But Oakwood Processing Plant loomed behind me like a dark stain on reality itself. I quit without notice. But sometimes late at night, I still hear whispers and wonder if it ever really let me go.